Welcome, Internet, to the Pixel Play Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast where we dive into the headlines, topics of discussion, rumors, all circulating in the gaming world. I am one of your hosts, Kaylan, aka Ktastrophy, joined as always by my usurping co-host, Adam, CSRadical. In this week's episode, we're going to be discussing the most
resemble that remark.
I heard the podcast last week. I know what was going on. In this week's episode, we're going to be discussing the most recent state of play from Sony, the new Nintendo Switch that got announced, Assassin's Creed becoming a live service, and Adam is coming to us with another untimely review. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a jam-packed week. I know you're not used to this, so buckle up. If you guys like what you hear, you guys can find us wherever you get your podcasts at Pixel Play Podcast. We are on YouTube as well if you want to see our lovely faces, youtube.com, and then just look for Pixel Play Podcast. If you want to be part of the show and email us, you can always send your questions, comments. Let us know how wrong our opinions are by emailing us at pixelplaypodcast@gmail.com. Or if you just want to, take some quick shots, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at pixelplaycast. With that all out of the way, let's jump right into it. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm conflicted. I'm sad that I can't radicalize people on my own for another show. But I do miss having you around. Although I will say, I'm very upset because this week, now that you're back, is busy, and I could have used at least one of these stories last week.
I bring the news, my friend. I bring the news.
Apparently.
So
I was not aware of this. I thought you were the eye candy and I was the opinions, but apparently you also are the news. We didn't discuss this when we first talked about making the show. You need to be more upfront with this stuff on me.
You are the technical support, sir. You are the sail that drives this ship. So we could not do it without you. But no, thank you so much for staying with the ship analogy, for captaining the ship while I was away. I say captain like I am the captain, but I digress. Thank you so much for kind of taking the helm and running the ship solo. While I wasn't here, you did an awesome job, so I appreciate that. I was off last week, and this week I am not feeling great. I got my second COVID shot.
I was going to say you're still kind of off, I guess, technically.
Yeah, nope, the show must go on. I'm feeling the cold grip of death just embrace me. Am I overreacting? No.
I mean,
not.
I'm pissed off. I got 2 shots of 5G in me and my internet's still the same. So I mean, I don't know what I got to do, man.
It was all lies.
I already sold my soul. Like, I don't know what else to give.
For sure. I mean, the plus side though, now that I got my second dose, I don't have to wear seatbelts anymore, so it's great.
Okay, that is true.
Yeah, it's what it protects against. So
now I wouldn't suggest doing that to anybody outside listening to this, but that's just something that we get to do. Okay,
yeah,
it's just us.
We don't go anywhere. Yeah, we don't go anywhere. So seatbelts are.
I mean, technically, the chair that I'm in is kind of like a race car chair. So I guess technically, I'd have to wear a seatbelt if I'm sitting in it.
You definitely have sat in that chair and just go brum 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 brum.
No, I've rolled down the hallway in this chair going brum 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 brum.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Adam, we're wasting a lot of time and we have a lot to jump into. Let's go straight where I want to go first. Sony's state of play. Ladies and gentlemen, if you missed it last week, Sony came out with a state of play, about 30 minutes or so. Had a lot of games. They said they were going to come talking about Deathloop and a lot of third-party games. In the end, we ended up getting a Moss 2, a sequel to the original Moss for VR. Interestingly enough, it said it was a PS5 game, so I'm curious what that means. Arcadegeddon, sort of a arcade multiplayer arena. It seems like it's a sports game meets like a battle royale game. Kind of weird. Like, it didn't really kind of explain it. Tribes of Midgard seems sort of like a Rust kind of aspect. Is that kind of how you describe it?
I'm not too familiar with those games in general, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask on that front, but
yeah, it's sort of like you build your territory, build your city, kind of build everything up so that you can kind of fight and defend against more monsters. It's kind of a weird game. I'll go through the rest. They did Fist, Forge and Shadow. That's the bunny game with the robotic arm. Hunter's Arena Legends. Sifu, which also got announced that it was deleted in a very clever way. Jet, The Far Shore. Demon Slayer. Lost Judgment. And Demon Slayer has a whole long name. I'm not getting into it. If you're interested, go check it out. Lost Judgment. Death Stranding Director's Cut, and Deathloop. Adam, real quick, surface level, quick opinion. Where do you fall on this state of play? How would you rate it?
About the same as every other one. couple of cool things in there. Nothing that really blew me away, unless it was like something specifically I was looking for. I mean, the Horizon one stands as the best one only because like Horizon was the one that I wanted to see. Because more often than not, they're like, here's a game as our big showcase, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of lukewarm on it. Deathloop was similar. Like, I watched the entire gameplay trailer for Deathloop and went, that looks cool, but is it going to be fun? And I'm not sure because I mean, most state of plays are like that too. Every single time I see the same reactions, like, why isn't this in there? It's like, guys, they told you it wasn't going to be there. They told you straight up it was going to be third-party stuff. So I don't know what you were expecting if like Square Enix was going to come out and show you like 5 Final Fantasy games all at once. I don't think we want to see any more Final Fantasy things from Square for that matter. But I mean, like, we know what state of plays generally are. They're more indie games that they feature because, quite honestly, most people don't know these games exist until they're shown off.
Yeah, I think I'm with you and I'm with the internet. Like, I was, to be honest, a little disappointed and underwhelmed with the state of play, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But it's just, for me, it was like, why did I watch this? And I feel like coming out of E3 and Sony not having a presence, and this is the first thing that they come back with, like, this is their first state of play since E3, and it's, no offense, kind of lackluster.
I will say that for sure. Like I know it's a state, like, as a state of play, it's perfectly fine as a state of play. It's just, you are going to get that look from people that you just made a video package post E3 that didn't really wow anybody, especially when this is a really perfect time to put your foot down because E3 was so underwhelming for most people that if you came out there and threw some awesome stuff into the ring, that could have been pretty interesting, especially when I've heard rumors that there may or may not be a God of War trailer in the next month or so coming up from what a lot of people are talking about. So if there's stuff they're saving for a rainy day, maybe it could have just not done anything for a little bit longer and let like the E3 buzz kind of wear off. Because I think if this is done in like August, I don't think we care nearly as much because there's been enough time. We might be asking the question, why haven't they done a big show yet? But for all we know, it could be like a December or an October thing like they did with like the PS5 reveals, right? So
they very well could have, but I feel like this was a huge missed opportunity for Sony. They literally had the setup, and all they had to do was spike the ball. E3 was like a lackluster. They didn't show up. All they could have been is like, hey, come here, check out these awesome games. And everyone would have been like, look, this is what E3 should be. This is what we were missing. And they could have just blown it out of the water. And they came with another lackluster show, and they really kind of screwed up. Even, you know what, come in and say like, yeah, we don't have a lot now. But if they had ended with like, by the way, stay tuned for, you know, this event or something on this date, so we had something to look forward to. But to just come out and be like, here's the state of play, and it comes out like a wet fart, like it was really disappointing. Like, for me, and I'll jump right into this, like, how effective are the state of plays? I don't think that they're effective, or I don't think that they're carrying Sony the way that they should. They've gotten rid of their large, you know, tent poles. They got rid of Paris Games Week. They got rid of PSX. They got rid of, you know, they don't do E3 anymore. We don't have those big events. And now we have these small little events that have, you know, maybe 1 or 2 highlights, but then they're buried with a bunch of, and no offense, small indie games that, you know, I'm not excited about. These are the kind of things that fill, you know, our little cut reel that's throughout a larger presentation. And I think Sony needs to come out and start getting us hyped as to why we bought these massive machines. But to come out and show us things like, no offense, Tribes of Midgard or Jet the Far Shore. And there was another one that was like made, I think it was Jet the Far Shore. It's like a small indie team of 3. Like, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. But that is not something that I'm going to, you know, get super pumped about and like, yeah, man, this is why I got my PlayStation, so I can play Jet the Far Shore. And so I feel like Sony needs to definitely start coming out and telling us like, hey, 1, this is why you bought the PlayStation. Here's what's coming down the pipe and why you should be excited. Here's a couple smaller games to kind of hold you over, but they need to have bigger events with more of a roadmap of what's going on. Microsoft is showing us games that they're coming out with, and maybe not all of them are huge bangers, but like they're showing us more great games than what Sony is right now. Very little on here. Like, I think Fist and Sifu are the only 2 that like I got really excited about. Death Stranding, I was like interested in. Deathloop, I've already seen. Like, there was nothing there to get me kind of excited. And so Sony, by doing these state of plays, they're asking us to put our time aside so that we could watch it. There's a reason they're putting this on YouTube. There's a reason that they're announcing it. They want us to watch this this video and get excited. But then they're also telling us don't get overhyped and don't get overexcited. If you're telling me to do that as a company, that is a bad idea. You do not want to be telling your customers, don't get overexcited, don't get your hopes up. What does that tell, your customers, and what does that kind of signify? I think the idea that, if you're going to ask me for my time and my attention, make it worthwhile. And I feel like the state of plays, especially lately, have been getting to that point where, I don't need to watch it. I mean, I think they kind of came out with, they did the state of play, and then I think later this week they came out with a video showing, Gran Turismo gameplay, and it looks incredible. And it's like, why the hell did you not put that in your state of play? So I don't know, Adam. I went on I'm gonna get down from my little soapbox. How effective are the state of plays for you?
They're not effective, but I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, because I think the people that they're aiming with are the people that are their diehards that literally buy 10, 20 games on their consoles. The way, I don't know if state of play for the average gamer is effective. Mm-hmm. I think for their audience that spends the most money might be, because they're constantly invested in what's coming in. I think there does need to be a shakeup on how they go about it. And there's a couple of different ways you could go about it. So I'll give you a couple of ideas that I just came up in the last 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So if you want to keep state of play to, say, every 2-3 months kind of deal, and you want to keep your indie scene going, then what you do is every time you do a state of play, have a short 15-20 minute video package of your big stuff. And if you want to highlight indie games, you can do that with solo videos. And in fact, you can probably do a better job at selling these indie games by doing this, by saying a 5-10 minute expose on the studio. Maybe it's a game we've never seen before, a studio that just came to exist, and you can have interviews with the developer to talk about their time trying to build this game and the dreams that they had of trying to do something like this, and the hardships of it, and maybe get people to like the developer on a personal level along with this interesting game that they're coming up with. The flip side is every month you do a state of play, but it's only designed to be, this is here's a few games that are coming on the store in the next 30 days. Do it at the start of every month or at the end of every month. Whenever you usually announce the PS Plus games for every month, do it then. So you can be hey guys, this entire month, here's a few of the games that you can look forward to seeing on the store in the next 30 days. And if that happens to include a big game, well, then you can throw a quick trailer in there. And then if you have something major, whether it's, maybe you got a new God of War trailer ready, because we're going with the rumor here, then maybe you do it on its own, because that will get people in the door if they find out that there's a God of War trailer, and you just pop it in there. Because, this is a bit of an aside, but just out of nowhere, we saw a trailer today, or not a trailer, but I guess technically a trailer for Ryan Reynolds' new movie. He just popped it on his own channel, and it's him and Deadpool with Korg from the Thor movies.
Korg or Krog?
Korg, I think?
I'll look it up. I thought it's Krog, but I'll look it up.
It came out of nowhere, and it's buzzing like a son of a bitch. So if you throw a God of War trailer out of the blue, the absolute breaking of the internet that will happen, Twitter will go nuts for a couple of hours. You'll get that kind of reaction. Or you go the other way around and you say, okay, well, we'll save this all until we have a good pool of stuff, and then we'll announce in advance, hey guys, we got a PlayStation Experience stream or whatever you want to name it. It'll be on this date. Come join us. We got a bunch of big stuff to show you. I think state of play is used almost like their way of segmenting all their announcements, and I don't think it is an effective way to a normal gamer. I think, like I said, it's probably great for the people that are constantly on the store looking for stuff. Because if Steam did something like this, other than their recommendations thing that you can go into, that would be effective too. It's the same kind of thing of people just browsing the stores trying to find stuff. State of play probably works really well for those people. But for the other 70% of gamers that own that console, look, other than Lost Judgment, but that's not even an indie game, it's a Sega game. So I go back to all the indie games, I'm going to be completely honest, they all look boring, but then again, a lot of them are genres that I'm not into. I could care less about Battle Royale, strategy games, survival games, all that stuff. So none of that stuff really appeals to me, so it doesn't do anything to me. Now, if all of a sudden there's this Fire Emblem clone or a JRPG, then maybe you get my attention, but it's not going to do it in the same way of, the big games are on PlayStation right now. So I think there needs to be a change in direction for how they're using these things, or they can just accept the fact that no one gives a shit about these things and they're kind of wasting their time, because that's honestly what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what I think the problem is that they keep hyping it up, being like, "Hey, this game, like I am going to bet that God of War trailer will be in the next one, because otherwise, if they don't have it, no one's going to be paying attention." I like your idea that you suggested of, "Hey, what if we, did a monthly thing? We'll announce the next coming PlayStation Plus games. We'll, here's what's coming in the store." I don't know if these state of plays are for the hardcore, PlayStation fans. I mean, I'd like to think I'm a pretty big Sony fan, and even still, I'm like, this doesn't interest me. And if we're going to even hardcore, like even more hardcore fans, they're the people that are already on the blogcast. These are the people who already know that it's coming. And so I don't know if you need to spend this much time and energy and throwing such a big net to kind of get them all hyped. That's not what it is. I think you kind of nailed it in that doing these monthly things. Here's what's coming to the store this month. But I think you need to have it be sort of like the little snacks in between the big meals. And then maybe Sony needs to, once or twice a year, do a big E3 press conference, and not necessarily at E3, but do their own big blowout. Here is everything that's coming in the next, 12 months or something like that, or the next 18 months, and do that every 12 months, 6 months. I don't know. I think they just need to have more to, like, here's the big stuff that most people are going to get hyped on. And then if you want to get like more in depth of what's coming this month, here is a state of play. But I think to have state of play be the main PR, marketing, advertising tool for your console, like, it's not doing well. Like, it's not achieving its goal.
Straight up, because I don't think if you are a Sony gamer and you're the getting it hyped up for state of plays, stop. And secondly, stop watching them live. Let's be honest, don't watch them live anymore. Like, it's pointless. Mm-hmm. And literally, like, they premiere it on YouTube. If you literally wait until it's done, you can watch it at your own pace, skip the shit you don't want to see, and just get to what you want. Like, if you really wanted to see Deathloop, just skip to the end. There's Deathloop. You're done. Cool. You end of story. You don't have to sit there for 40 minutes getting pissed off at every game that you don't care about. I mean, again, like, people that I every time I go to State of Play, just for my own amusement, although mostly to my detriment, I'll watch the YouTube or Twitch chat for about a minute just to watch. And the amount of disdain on these people, I don't know if they're serious or not. That's the problem with the internet, too. For all you know, it's just people having a laugh by just shitting on everything. But I know that there are people that are serious when they're like, dude, I don't care about this. Just show me this thing. It's like, guys, how many times do we have to have these state of plays until you realize they're not going to give you these things? State of plays do not do this. They tell you when the big game is coming. They tell you when Horizon is getting gameplay trailers. They don't tell you, like, that this new reveal of a big AAA game is coming in state of plays, because that's not what the state of plays seem to be for. We may not think that what they're for is right either, but we know what they definitely aren't for, and that's big shocking reveals.
Yeah.
That's not what they are. So stop pretending like they are. And every single time that these people watch these state of plays and get tricked, it's like, dude, how many times? Like, this is not even the fool me twice. This is the fool me, I don't know what you would call 7 times, but that's what it is. It's like, we're having the conversation now because we can't understand why state of play is even a thing right now.
Mm-hmm. No, but this is what I'm saying, is that you have such an invested and captivated audience that wants to watch these, that wants to get excited, and you're blowing it. And
to which I say the only thing you can do, because it doesn't seem like PlayStation wants to change that, is stop watching them so they realize that, oh, there's no point in this. We need to find something else to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah,
you're gonna watch the state of play after if it's on YouTube, but like if they see that their live stream numbers are low because it seems like there's a point in watching them, they'll notice and they'll try to do something to make it worth watching. Mm-hmm. Again, it's the voting with your wallet. Vote with your time.
Yeah, that's true. Also, just to add, the rock person's name in Thor is Korg, so you were correct. Do you want to dive into this director's cut idea? So one thing that came out is that they did announce a Death Stranding director's cut. And then it came out later that apparently Hideo Kojima was not super impressed with the term or title of director's cut. What do you think of, because this is now the second one, because we've got Ghost of Tsushima which is now a director's cut with Ikishima, which I totally called. Wait for the story. It's going to totally be true. And now we've also got Death Stranding. What do you think of this director's cut idea?
It's dumb because they're not films.
Exactly. I'm completely agree. Like, I think calling it a director's cut, they're trying to get you the idea that like people know what a director's cut is. But I would argue, and I am not a filmmaker or I am not a game maker by any stretch of the imagination, but I am smart enough to know that they are probably made very differently. You shoot a lot of stuff. You make a lot of you make a lot of content with a movie, and then you have to cut it to kind of make the movie flow, or you might have pressure. You also have a time limit. You cannot make a 12-hour movie. No one's going to watch a 12-hour movie.
I mean, it's pretty simple. The director's cut is when something's edited fully in the director's vision. Here's the thing with the game. Are they changing the game story? No.
Yeah.
They're adding, like, what's going on in Death Stranding? They're adding stuff. Yeah. It's not a director's cut. It's just DLC. Call it something else.
Yeah, I almost like call it like a reimagining or something.
Like I don't imagine that Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut is suddenly going to have Jin not being a ghost.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the events of the game are going to suddenly change. I don't think, like, major pieces of the story are going to switch. Like, they're just adding a few things in there. It's not the same as what people expect, like, a director's cut film to be. Like, the name of a game being a director's cut just seems pointless.
Here's the other thing that's going to piss people off is that if you call it a director's cut, this implies that content was there and then removed and is now being resold. And people get pissed off with DLC when it's like made and not added to the game, when it like made before the game is released and not added. So is this implying, hey, this content was there, we just cut it, but now we're going to sell it back to you at a discounted?
Yeah, you really could just be calling it Death Stranding. Here's all the shit we thought wasn't a good idea, and now we just want money for it.
Unless they're like, if they're totally taking the feedback that came from players and saying, you know, we didn't like this, or, you know, the walking mechanics were, you know, too, you know, pain in the ass or whatever. Like, if they're making genuine like improvements of life, like that's great. Like, I was looking at it like, this kind of seems cool.
Sure, but then the question becomes, Kojima was the director, right? Did he not like what they did with the original cut of the game?
Yeah, or did he just take the feedback? And in which case, I would say this is more of a reimagining than anything. But I look at Ghost of Tsushima, I see very little there that actually suggests that it's new content. I mean, Ikishima is more of a traditional like DLC as opposed to, hey, we just cut this because the story wasn't, you know, we didn't have space. No, you had a solid story with a, you know, beginning, middle, and end. So there wasn't a need. It's not like you were removing this. Like, this is going to be something that is tacked on after, which is totally fine. But this is not what makes a director's cut.
I mean, just give it a different name. Just call it Death Stranding, The Journey. I don't know, like The Journey Ends. The Journey can, like, I don't know. There's a million titles you can give it that isn't director's cut. It just comes off like you're trying to be hip and cool to like film buffs. It's like, dude, it's a video game. Like, you don't need to try to give us this hippy dippy shit. Like, just call it something. You can call it anything and we'll be like, oh, so it's a better version of Death Stranding? I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to do. You don't need to make it that complicated. Director's cut just feels lazy.
It does. Yeah, it feels very unimaginative. And I don't find it actually is very descriptive. And I think a lot of people are going to get misled as to what it is. Especially if you got like, you know, Billy at the store who's, you know, not listening to this podcast. Billy, what the hell you doing? Listen to it. But, you know, they just go to the store and they play Ghost of Tsushima and they're like, oh man, there's a new like director's cut. I'm curious to see what this is. And he goes home and it's basically the same game with some DLC content added. Like, I don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah, you're gonna get the feeling thinking like, oh, I'm gonna experience a different game now. Nah, I don't think that's gonna be the case.
No. Yeah, it's just we'll have to see how that goes. That being said, as much as I bitch and complain, I am very excited to play more Ghost of Tsushima. So, Ghost of Ikishima, here I come. Adam, Sony wasn't the only one who disappointed us last week. Let's move on to Nintendo. So, if you weren't aware, the long-awaited Nintendo Switch Pro or Super Switch. I'm going to call it the Super Switch.
Nintendo Switch 2.
Whatever. The long-rumored, long-excited, you know, step up to the Switch was announced last week. And once again, it disappointed. So this is coming from Joe Screbbles at IGN. So he writes, Nintendo has finally revealed its long-rumored new model of the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch OLED model. just amazing creative work there, Nintendo. It will be released on October 8th and retail for $349.99 USD, which, if I understand, is roughly the same price as an Xbox Series S.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. So the upgraded machine, which many had taken to calling the Switch Pro when it was being rumored ahead of its announcement, features a larger 7-inch OLED screen, but the size of the console is unchanged from the base Switch model. A wider adjustable base stand, enhanced audio, 64 gigs of internal storage, and a wired LAN port in the dock. Contrary to previous reports, the new model doesn't appear to offer 4K TV output or improved performance. The new OLED screen, while providing an improved picture contrast, remains at a 1280 by 720 resolution screen. Battery life remains the same as the improved base Switch model from 2019 at an estimated 4.5 to 9 hours. Adam,
yes.
Where do you fall on this new Switch?
I'm gonna ask a simple question, Nintendo. You don't actually have anything, do you?
Yeah.
You didn't plan anything, did you?
The rumor just got away, and they're like, "Oh crap, we need to get something like quick, throw something on there."
Also, can I remind you, Nintendo, that the Vita has existed for a lot longer than your fucking Switch has?
Yeah, it has.
OLED technology isn't a new thing.
Yeah,
it might make your graphics better, but you're still at 720p, so good for you, I guess. Also,
but the thing was anyone clamoring for an OLED screen? Like, no, nobody wanted this.
You know what they wanted? Their controllers not to kill on them.
Mm-hmm.
The battery to last a little bit longer, for it to run better and be able to run better games. And none of those have applied. So you're basically getting what we in the industry like to call an iPhone.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's
what the Switch is. It's another iPhone.
The biggest improvement, I think, to the Switch is the fact that it now has a LAN port, because you're going to be starting to see a lot more third-party games coming to PS5 and, Xbox Series, whatever, that they're not going to be able to keep up, and you're going to have to do more of that cloud streaming, and you're going to need that LAN port, because doing it over Wi-Fi is not going to be enough. And I don't know, like, I look at this, and this is once again really disappointing. Like, the people who are playing the Switch handheld, they don't care that it's not an OLED screen. They don't care that they're trading off that resolution for the convenience of being able to play it wherever. They're not going to be like, "Oh man, this game is great. Too bad it looks like crap when I'm sitting at an airport." No, they're happy that they can play a video game at an airport. Like, that's what the selling feature of this.
Yeah, what they want is they want to be able to play it at that airport longer without having to charge it. That's what they want.
And the OLED screen is not going to do anything to help that.
So, they had a chance to go in one of two directions. They could have made it better for the people that play it on their TV. They could have made it, better resolution, a better dock, one that doesn't look like a flimsy piece of plastic. Or they could have gone the mobile route, which is have a longer battery life. It's maybe a little bit stronger on the armor protection. There's a lot of other directions they could have gone in that way. And they chose to do neither.
Yeah.
So, that begs the question, Nintendo, why?
Yeah.
I'm starting to assume that this is almost like the 3DS or 3DS XL, where it just feels like a very, 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 very minor upgrade in preparation in the next 2 years of the big one.
Yeah.
Which,
no, I think
if you're trying to sell people consoles, I mean, I guess if you're going to change the SKU so that this is now the default Switch, I mean, cool, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I don't know who this is for. Most people who want a Switch have a Switch now. And I don't see, especially because this one's costing the same as much as an Xbox. It's not got the selling appeal as it does before. You're now going to have the older models, which will go down in price theoretically. And those are going to be the ones that people grab because it's not as much of a graphical improvement or gameplay improvement to say, yeah, I'm going to pay that extra amount. So I don't know who this is for. Now, my question to you is, do you think that there was a situation where Nintendo was looking to do this? They were looking to upgrade it, put some new chips, boost it up. And with everything that's going on, in the chip world, they're just like, we can't do this. And this is a half step. And they're just going to save that for the next release. No,
because if that was the case, then why do we have all these games that Nintendo has been holding back for years and years and years? It's not like it's out of their wheelhouse to not do that. They're still selling Switches the rate that they want them to. They're still selling their big name games at the way they want to. They could have just held it back and no one gives a shit. Really, no one would have cared. we've seen before that Nintendo fans specifically they'll deal with it, they'll take it on the chin and be ready for the next big announcement that gets them going again. So I don't think Nintendo pulling back any sort of a new console for another year or two just because they didn't have anything, I don't think it was going to make a difference. Because let's be honest, our complaint isn't about the Switch. It's still about the library. I think I don't care about an OLED Switch when there's still no games I want to play on it. You know?
Yeah, and this is an issue that this is going to only exacerbate the problem because you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have more and more games that cannot, perform well on the Switch, and so it's going to exacerbate. Nintendo's going to have to put more time and effort into filling out that roster themselves.
And on top of that, like obviously with the fact that everybody's already pretty annoyed with the lack of games to begin with, now this coming out into the ether just gives them more fodder to go with. It just gives them more things to be upset about. And again, you're like in the same way that we were talking about, PlayStation screwing around with their state of plays. Right now, even as a Sony guy, I hate to say it, but Microsoft, at least PR-wise, has the best going for them right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're quietly just putting a library together. Now, to go back to the state of play thing just briefly, Microsoft doesn't do these state of play kind of things. They just pop out a picture that says, here's everything out of the Game Pass and just be done with it. And it works. Nintendo isn't doing that either. And everybody's looking at their library because there's nothing. Nintendo's quiet because they literally are quiet.
Yeah.
It just comes down to like, if you're a Nintendo fanboy, you should be upset at like all hell right now because you're not getting anything to do, and the thing you were looking forward to for like 6 months turned out to be a dud. So that's not great. If you're a Sony fan, you're mostly okay just because of stuff that you're getting enough to at least be happy. You just want the big announcements so you can see what you're getting into for the next like couple of years. So you're just more impatient. Microsoft fans are sitting here being like, look, we may not have anything like super like over the top amazing right now, like Halo, we're still waiting on that, but at least they ain't doing anything to really piss us off right now.
Yeah, I feel like Sony has high expectations and they're not meeting them. Xbox, I would argue, had low expectations. Like no one really had a lot of expectations for Xbox going into this generation.
They're exceeding them.
And they're exceeding them.
Just being, I guess,
and
good.
And Nintendo has no expectations and is still missing them. Like they're still disappointing.
Well, I think the average gamer still has like decent expectations for Nintendo because the pedigree of the games that they have are really, really, really high. So
are they?
They would assume. Sorry, what?
Now here's what like it's this is gonna be a hot take, and I'm not gonna go down this rabbit hole because I want to like, but Nintendo, does Nintendo have the same pedigree that they did that, or are they just riding on reputation? Like I'm thinking like this is the thought, and we can dive into this in another episode because I'm not prepared to have this full conversation, but like how much of like their reputation, how much of their people saying, oh, they make great games and stuff, how much of that is, they're actually doing that, and how much of it is just them kind of riding on their legacy? Because yeah, they make great games, but a lot of them now are just like remakes and ports, and there's not a lot of originality coming out of Nintendo.
I would say it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B. I think they are, at least on this generation of consoles, they've put in their pedestal games already with Odyssey and Breath of the Wild and stuff like that.
But those were the two games that basically came out at launch, and
that's really what I was going to say. It's also in column B but they haven't done anything since, so there's not really much else to go with it. Because
if you think of the other big ones that came out, so like I will give it to you. Yes, I don't like Breath of the Wild, but that's fine. I recognize that it is a huge seller, and a lot of people love it. So they came out with Odyssey and Breath of the Wild at the beginning, bangers, fantastic. Things are looking great for Nintendo. Then the big stuff that came out is like Mario Party, and that was a dud. Mario Kart, which was good, but it's a remake, or it's like a remaster or a port or whatever. Same with Smash. Smash is huge, but it's just a continuation of the Wii U. Pokemon Snap, that kind of came and went in really quickly, and Pokemon itself is not doing great. You've got Animal Crossing, which, once again, huge banger, it's a huge success, but like that's not showing me a healthy, first-party lineup for a console. So I don't know. We can talk about this more another time. Like I'd like to actually I'd be curious to look and see how many games is Nintendo slipping, and that's something that we could look at another time.
Yeah, I mean, again, we do have to keep in mind that it's hard to judge because the last 12 to 18 months have been mostly shallow everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you really talk of like, you can name games in the last 24 months, last 2 years, and very few of them will come from Nintendo's platform. And if they do come from Nintendo's platform, they're ports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like every other console has its, first party games and it's trickling out. And they're not all necessarily bangers, but like they're at least original, sequels or like they're new content. It's not just, hey, we took our games from the Wii U that you did not buy and we're trying to sell it to you again.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
It's the simplest way. The simplest way to go is just Nintendo had a chance to at least like stoke some fires again, and they just went and basically just fell back in the ice cold water they've been sitting in for a while.
Yeah. No, honestly though, ladies and gentlemen, reach out to us. Let us know through the Twitter, Instagram, or email, or even if you're watching this on YouTube, put in the comments like, is Nintendo, getting a bit of a free pass based on its legacy, or are they actually doing great? And are we making a big deal of nothing for the Switch OLED? Adam, let's continue. Sorry, did you have anything else to finish for the Switch?
No, because if I say anything more, I'm just going to keep digging a bigger hole for Nintendo to trip into next time. So I'll let them do it on their own.
Fair enough. Next one on the list of people who disappoint us. New Assassin's Creed is now going to be a service-based game. So this is coming from Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, and it's a long article. I suggest you go read it, but I'm going to try and make it as concise as I can. So he writes, Assassin's Creed, a video game franchise set in a huge world where each one can take hundreds of hours to complete, is getting even bigger. A new project, which is known inside Ubisoft Entertainment SA by the codename Assassin's Creed Infinity, sets out to create a massive online platform that evolves over time, according to people familiar with its development. Whereas previous Assassin's Creed games each unfolded in specific historical settings, such as ancient Greece, or I'm going to butcher this, Ptolemaic Egypt, basically Egypt, Infinity will contain multiple settings with room to expand to others in the months and years following its debut, said the people who asked not to be identified, discussing a project under development. Individual games on the platform might look and feel different, but they will all be connected. ... He continues, a spokeswoman for Ubisoft declined to discuss Infinity in detail, but acknowledged its existence. Ubisoft aims to exceed the expectations of fans who have been asking for a more cohesive approach to the series, the spokeswoman said. Inspired by smash hits like Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto 5, these living online platforms can keep players engaged for years by frequently adding new content or changing the experience in dramatic ways. The fifth Grand Theft Auto game, which has sold more than 140 million copies, largely thanks to its constantly updated multiplayer mode, is approaching its 8th birthday with versions planned for third generation of game consoles. My apologies. Service games generate huge revenue over time by hooking players and pushing them to spend money on special content within the game. GTA 5 helped drive shares of its publisher, Take-Two Interactive Software Incorporated, up 42% since the beginning of last year. In the same period, Ubisoft shares were flat. After news of Assassin's Creed Infinity, the stock jumped again to Wednesday in a trading, intraday training. I don't know. I'm not an accountant or financial guy. So, Adam, what do you make of Assassin's Creed being a service game? What do you think that's going to look like, first of all?
An unfinished game?
Yeah.
if I'm being serious, that's what I think it'll be, because that's what every service game has been. But I mean, if we're talking, what it's going to look like, it's going to look like a game that's going to have a bunch of stuff in it at the very beginning that'll end pretty quickly, have nothing to go on, whether that's a couple of time periods, whatever that may be with what it looks like. And then over time, they'll come up with other ideas, whether they're good or bad, and they'll throw them in collectively. And that sounds all and good on paper sometimes. I mean, look, it sounds pretty cool that you can play a game that you can go to multiple time periods. They may even add more time periods down the road. That sure might be swell. But what are you going to do if the story sucks? Because that's a possibility. What are you going to do if the gameplay runs stale within the first 20 hours? What are you going to do when the quality of the game is lessened because they don't care, because they know they can add it in later? I don't get why people are even remotely interested in the idea of games as a live service anymore. Because every example that we've seen has proven that for the most part, it's not worthwhile. Yeah,
for every one hit you have 3 or 4 anthems. Which
everybody looks at Destiny and thinks that it works really well. It's like, guys, keep in mind that Destiny is a game that unless you're really into it, you play it, have nothing to do, so you leave it for 4 months and come back and have to pay money to come back. Why?
Yeah, how I see them kind of implementing this, if it was me, or like the way that makes sense, is I think what they're hopefully doing is they're going to wrap up that mess of a modern day story, which is absolutely the worst part of the game. If you like that part, you're wrong. It's fine. But what they're going to do is they're going to say, like, okay, we're going to wrap up this, main story, do it over, a couple seasons or whatever. And it'll just be you're an animus hopping from, time period to time period, chasing whatever. But I don't know, like for me, like as an Assassin's Creed fan, like I've played every single one of them. I mean, except Assassin's Creed Rogue, just because it just never worked out. But like I've played them all. I love them. I'm a history nerd. I'm a stealth nerd, and I know it's not stealth anymore, so whatever. But like I've been getting more and more disappointed, and I think that this might be the nail in the coffin. Like I don't want to pay, constantly to play Assassin's Creed games. Like I like having a standalone game that is small, or not small, but is truncated. It is a start and finish, and then you're done, move along kind of game. I do not need it to be a live service. It's something I look forward to. I play it at the end of the year. I play it for a couple months. I'm done. I'm never going back to it. And to be fair, that worked well. Like I feel like the thing I didn't like about Valhalla is Valhalla just dragged on too long, and Assassin's Creed is very much starting to seem like a soap opera, especially with that modern day stuff. And so I don't know. I don't see it working. I think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to go well.
So here's a hot take. And this is a large reason of why we're getting games like Valhalla, and we're getting obviously this thing with Infinite potentially. Mm-hmm. We need to stop valuing hours of time as a measure of what's worth our money. I'm not saying we don't get rid of it entirely, but I think we need to stop looking at 100 hours in a video game, meaning that it's worth your money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to review Miles Morales very shortly on this podcast, and that game took me less than 10 hours, and I loved every moment of it. I could have played another 10 hours, could have played another 20 hours of it, honestly. But 100 hours? I don't know if I love a lot of things 100 hours. I can play a JRPG because most of what a JRPG is grinding. It's a lot of storytelling because it's all text usually. Sometimes you'll get some voice acting ones, but more often than not, it's a lot of text. And there's a lot of things to do, a lot of side quests. What is Valhalla? What is Assassin's Creed right now? And I've played Odyssey. I haven't played Valhalla yet. I'm getting to that at some point, hopefully. But I've played Odyssey. You know what Odyssey is? It's a story that isn't very good, that has the same 5 side quests repeated 100 times, with a giant map that has nothing to do in it. You know what a JRPG does? It has a lot of shit to do in a world that isn't overwhelming to you, and has a story that most of the time is really worthwhile, and in the same amount of hours. So what's the problem here? It's the fact that the kind of game that this, with Assassin's Creed, is trying to make does not fit 100 hours. You can make it fit 100 hours, but it's not going to be a good 100 hours. I know a lot of people say they love those kind of games, and believe me, I do too, because I do like time wasters, because it is nice to have something that I can just throw a podcast on when I need to catch up on something and just go like do random stuff for 2 hours and not have to think. It's nice. But after playing like one of those, I don't really want to go back to another one in a couple of months, and then a couple of years down the road, the same game comes out again from the same series, and I'm just playing it with a different coat of paint.
Yeah. I think the problem is that the examples that we've given so far, like we have Grand Theft Auto, we have Fortnite, we have Destiny, like those are the big ones. Those aren't story-driven games. Those aren't games that anyone is playing for the story. Grand Theft Auto might be the closest, but most of the people playing Grand Theft Auto are not playing it for the long-term narrative of GTA Online. They're playing it to do dumb shit and like fly planes through like on like Hot Wheels racetracks in the sky. Like that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like you can make the argument that Destiny has story, but it's mostly for like lore hunters. So there's that.
Yeah. But the story is not what is the driving force of that game. No. It's the gameplay, it's the loops, it's the loot, it's the
raids are what sells those games right now.
Yeah. And so when you take a game like Assassin's Creed, which I don't think anyone is clamoring like, oh man, Assassin's Creed is the best like gameplay game in the sense of, everyone's dying to play the mechanics. It's a pretty standard game, but it's a combination of having a story and good mechanics. And I find that, if you're going to do a certain live service, it's going to become a situation where it's just, here's the episode of the week or the month or whatever, play it. And then like nothing's going to get resolved because you can't resolve anything because that's not how a live service works.
We need to get rid of the giant maps too.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like, look, it used to be such like a badge of honor to show how big your map was. It's like, guys, I think we've understood now that a map can only be so big before it's lifeless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, believe me, I loved God of War, like the new God of War, but there's so much dead space in the water of that map. It's like, man, you could have streamlined this just a little bit more. And that's not even a big map in comparison to other games. Like Odyssey, holy crap, there is way too much nothingness there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Assassin's Creed is a big example of that. Because
wait for Valhalla. Wait for Valhalla, my friend.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. You see, I think God of War did it right though, in that God of War, for the most part, like it had a larger hub world, but it's not huge.
It's not
and
huge.
Then it has
it's still slightly a little too big, but at least there's the smaller levels to make it feel like it isn't.
Yeah, but I find the thing is, it also doesn't. I find it doesn't waste your time in the sense of go to point A on the northeast corner. You get there and they're like, "Oh, too bad. We need you to go down to the southwest."
That is true.
Corner.
They don't do that shit.
Like it's pretty direct. Like unless you're going around and you're exploring and you're doing like your own wandering, it has a pretty tight, narrow corridor for you to follow through. And I find that the other thing is that they fill it. Like you've got Mimir going off giving his like stories and stuff that at least like I enjoyed that time because it was interesting to travel. Something like Valhalla, I'm just sitting there and I'm just riding my horse and there's like some background music playing, which is just, it's boring.
Yeah, God of War is definitely like the closest you can get to treading that line, but it does a good enough job at least trying to keep you invested. Whereas games like Assassin's Creed, and I don't know, actually let's turn it around a little bit because you finished that not too long ago either. How does Cyberpunk deal with that stuff?
Cyberpunk I found was better about it. Like I found that like the city, like it, like the fast traveling was good, like, but it like you move quickly through the town and you move quickly through the map. I didn't find it overly large, but I also found that it was like, it was done well in a way that I found like it was somewhat contained. So like I was playing one part of the map and then once I did all that, then it opens up a little bit more and I don't have a reason to go out to the far ends and then come back for the most part. I mean, as you get later on in the game, you might connect with people and have to go a little bit further, but like, yeah, it was not as much of a chore as it was for something like Valhalla.
Do you remember how it used to be with like GTA 3 and Vice City and stuff like that in San Andreas? How you would start in one section and then a mission would unlock the next section. And then a couple hours later, another mission would unlock this section. And by the end of the game, you have the entire map to play in.
Yeah.
The problem with Assassin's Creed games is that for the most part, they just give you a map and be like, do whatever you want.
Yeah. No, that is like a problem with it in that like that they let you loose. And then because you're let loose, they throw stuff across the map and there's no, I mean, I'm sure there is. I'm not trying to like crap on them. Like there is thought put into it, but there's a lot of time spent going back and forth. The one thing that Valhalla did do well is that for the most part, you would go to an area and you would do missions within that area, but it was way too big that it was just took forever to get anywhere. And it was like, this isn't fun.
It's also too like, well, there are some games where that kind of travel can at least be interesting. Like I'm sure Cyberpunk, because there's cars and stuff, there are ways to make that journey a little bit more interesting. I feel like it's really hard to do when you're on a horse, on a boat, or walking.
Here's the thing. If your game has an option that you can like fast traveling, I totally understand. And I think that there should be fast traveling. And I get that you have to go from point A to point B walking. That's fine too. But if your game has a system where you could just set, autopilot so your character can ride to a point, your map is too big. You are taking away, you are admitting that this is not a fun activity and that people may not want to do it. And if you're doing that, then you have not designed a good map.
Now, because we went off topic, to go back to the live service thing, again, we don't have very many examples of games that work under that service. And it's in the same vein of like, I think people look at, GTA Online and Destiny and Fortnite and look at it the same way that a lot of people used to look at World of Warcraft and being like, we got to do that. Because look at how much money that makes us. Same with Overwatch. Everybody looked at Overwatch for a while and said, we got to do that. That's where the money is. And then you realize that just because you do the exact same thing they do doesn't mean it will work. And I think with Assassin's Creed, this is a really stupid idea because it seems like they're trying to make the games even bigger when the reality is they need to find a way to streamline this down to 60 hours.
They need to make it smaller. Yeah. Like if you think of like the golden ones, like the ones that people love, it's, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, it's Assassin's Creed 2, and like for all the crap that
and they're
Cyberpunk
still big.
Gets, they are. But one of the things, like Cyberpunk gets a lot of crap, but the one thing that CD Projekt Red did really well, and I kind of wish that more games did, is have a smaller, truncated story. And Cyberpunk could have even been a little bit longer because it is a breezy game. But the fact that they said, hey, our main quest, like the main story here, you can breeze through it 20 hours or so, great. But there is so much more. Like if you want just a quick game, you want to get in, get the story, get out, it's not going to take you long. You can do it. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to do more side quests and flesh out those side characters and build character relationships and have that impact the game, that's awesome. Like I feel like having a game where there's off ramps. So like you want to just get the main story, get in, get out, you're done. Here you go. There's that option. If you want a main story with a little bit more fleshed out characters, here's the main game along with some side quests that you can complete beforehand. And then hey, you want to live in this world? Here is a bunch of stuff that you can do. And I think having those ramps that players can kind of decide like, hey, I'm done. Like I'm finished with this game. I think that works. And this brings up the thing, like, this is why people don't finish games. Like they're too long and there's no, like, it's either I'm going to play this right to the end or I'm going to quit halfway through, and it's hard for people to get invested.
Not to mention that there are people that really like trophy and achievement hunting, and when you're playing a game like Assassin's Creed and realizing how much redundant shit you have to do. Because, like, look, I'm sure, Cyberpunk does it pretty well, where most of the stuff that you do on the side is really engaging, or is at least, like, interesting. Assassin's Creed, it's the same thing 50 times. It's the same, go find a base, kill everybody in it, and light the tower on fire or some shit. 50 times.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I remember with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, like, you had 50 targets to kill to get, like, the true ending or whatever.
And it was the same format. Sneak up on a place, kill a few people in between, Spartan kick off from a roof.
Pretty much, yeah. So I don't know. Like I love the Assassin's Creed franchise. Like it's something like it was one of the first games that I played on the PS3, and I've loved it. I've got a couple of the collector's editions. Like I love it, but it is a franchise that is personally like getting harder and harder to get excited for. And I'd like to just see it go back to its roots. Get rid of this modern story crap. Just tell an endless war between Templars and Assassins, and just tell a little micro story throughout. Talk of times where, the Assassins were on top and they had to defend against the Templars or vice versa or something like that. Like, just make these smaller little stories.
At the very least, if you want to do a modern story so badly, don't have a modern story where it's fighting. Just have, like, this cool story of, like, this archaeologist or whatever that's trying to find interesting things about the world, and through the animus is able to, like, learn things that we never did before. Like, you can have it as simple, like, if you want to have some interjection of modern, like, stuff, do that. Stop trying to make this, like, extra story along with it of, like, the Templar. Like, if you want to do something like that maybe down the road, just make a modern game with it. Like, just do that. Just do a short, like, 10-hour game and having fun with that.
Well, it's interesting because I wonder, like, I played Odyssey, but I never played, like, the Atlantis stuff. And then I went into Valhalla, and apparently you had to be, like, invested and have played all of the Atlantis stuff. And I wonder if that's what it's just going to look like, is just, it's just going to be smaller DLC throughout the whole time. And I don't know.
And what's it going to cost, which is the even bigger part. It's like, are you going to want to waste the money on, let's be honest, copy and pasted content?
Yeah. I don't know. All right, Adam, I feel like we've gone through everything that's, like, disappointed us. Let's talk about something that isn't disappointing. You have an untimely review. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not aware, Adam and I do not have the clout or the money to get games for free ahead of time or provided to us by games. So we play them on our own time with our own dime. So we bring you the reviews as we play them, when we play them. And Adam is coming to us this week with an untimely review of Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
Now, I love how you were like, well, and speaking of things that aren't disappointing, how do you know that? I haven't reviewed the game yet.
Because you said earlier in the show that you loved... No, you said halfway through the show that you loved it.
Okay, that's true.
And I said spoiler warnings.
Wait, did I say...
You totally did.
You're expecting me to have a memory. I was busy yelling at things. Why would I...
Now you have a choice. You can either make me a liar and lie to the good folks listening, or Kaylan was right.
He's a menace.
So, Adam, let's start right at the top. What overall is your opinion of Spider-Man Miles Morales?
Isn't it interesting when an open world game, as we were just talking about, is shorter and like all its traveling mechanics are enjoyable? Like, I only used fast travel after I beat the game because I just wanted to finish the scavenger hunt part of the mission just really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm really annoyed that Spider-Cat doesn't exist until after the story. That makes me really sad because I could not have...
Yeah, right?
I could not... Look. I can understand if you don't want him there in the major battles. Like, you can just say, like, this suit's only available in the open world stuff. Fine.
Yeah.
Give that to me earlier than the end of the game, because by the end of the game, I didn't have anything to do, because I'm a completionist. I finished the game, everything else before I finished the story. So basically, all I could do was just fight random people with Spider-Cat. Like, what's the point now?
So let's start right at the top. Let's start with the story. What did you think of the story of Miles Morales?
It was good. Like, I wouldn't put it at the same level of the first game. And I think that's because, obviously, I have a lot more memory of the characters. And, like, Miles Morales is mostly an anomaly to me. I haven't gone too deep in it before. Now that I've played this and watched Spider-Verse, now I'm a little more aware of what goes on with all this stuff. I mean, the story itself is perfectly fine. It's serviceable. Like, I'm not blown away by anything, but I also wasn't, like, angry at any of the choices they made. Apart from the cliche, like, person sacrifices themselves at the end of the game. And I'm not going to spoil anything beyond that because I know there are some people that still haven't played it yet. But, like, other than that cliche, nothing really bothered me in that game. It was just a simple case of, like, okay, here's Miles... learning the ropes, or I guess the webs in this case, and just going on dealing with his own mission, and ends up turning into something big towards the end. And villains were fine. The story was decent. Like the voice acting was pretty solid. Like everything was just perfectly fine. Like I wasn't blown away by anything, but I also like enjoyed my time with it the entire way through.
Yeah, see, I'm with you for the most part. Like I felt that the story was a little. I don't know, it was missing something. Like, I felt that...
It could have used a big villain, but at the same time, they're all technically in jail at this point, so what do you use without going into, like, the symbiotes?
But the thing is, and I know that this is just, like, a half step, in that we will most likely get, like, the Green Goblin and Venom in the next one, hopefully. But I think they had, like, two sort of villains in this, and I feel like they probably didn't need it. Like, for a game this short, they probably should have just stuck with one villain and just flushed them out. I think having both, and I'm not going to get into which was which, was just kind of, I don't know, unnecessary, and it kind of just took away from the game itself. I would have liked to have seen the game a little bit longer and flesh it out a little bit more. The other thing is, I felt, did you find that they used the world map enough? Like, I'm of the mind that it was like the jam was spread too thin on too big of a bread. Like, I felt like something like Miles Morales, with it all being about him being Harlem Spider-Man, I would have liked to have seen him focus and stay more in that neighborhood.
I didn't really have an issue with the world itself. I thought that there was enough to do to at least, like, not bog me down. Because, like, anything that they popped you into, whether it was the mission that your uncle puts onto you and finding, like, the music samples, the bases that you do, there's a few others that I'm just blanking on right now. Oh, the, like, finding the treasure caps, like, the time capsules. Like, there's enough of those things that as soon as they unlock, and if you want to do them right before you do the next mission, it's maybe 30, 60 minutes. Doesn't take too much out of you. So it's a good, like, I felt like they did the right thing in not overdoing it. Because I think if they try to put too much in, then it falls into that same trap of, okay, how many times can you break a base? Or how many times do you want to go using the same, like, corny, like, look, I guess my only other complaint was the sampling, like, music thing was really dumb.
See, I kind of like that. I thought that was
I found the mechanics of, like, the finding, like, the perfect angle, I thought was really tedious.
Oh, yeah, that was dumb.
Because sometimes they weren't very clear. So like the actual idea itself was fine, but I think the execution was not as great as it could have been. They could have found a better way of doing it. But I mean, even then, like, you're not. It's painless, and it's not even something you have to do. Like, if you're just taking the story as it is, it's pretty good. And again, the combat and the traversing is what puts that game where it is, and it does a fantastic job of that. I will say I didn't find myself using gadgets very much in this specific game. Like, I don't think I never used the spider bot. I think I used the projection thing like maybe once. So I found myself just having an easier time just doing what I usually do, which is knocking people into the air and kicking them off a roof.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I felt the same way. Like, I used some of the tools and like the electrical stuff, but like I want it to be like Spider-Man, not so much Batman. And so like I'm sure, like I don't read the Miles Morales comics, so I don't really know if that's to his character. I imagine it is, but like for me, I want to play as Spider-Man. I'm not using the gadgets a whole lot.
No, the stealth combat is just as fun as it used to be, and that's all I had fun with.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of the guy who played Miles Morales? For me, that was one of the things that I wasn't a huge fan of. I found that he came across as like really whiny and like not like his dialogue lines, but just like the way that he like you'd be swinging through town, and I always just remember he's like, "Oh no, what about this? Oh no, the I mean,
isn't he like 16?
He is, but like I know
what I was as a teenager, and that's exactly what I was as a teenager.
I know, I get it, but like for me, it was just I found him like whiny, especially when you consider him to Peter Parker. And I know Peter Parker was a totally different character, a little bit more experienced, but I felt the constant whininess of him was just kind of annoying.
I didn't find myself getting too pent up about that.
Yeah,
mind you, I was too busy listening to Jonah Jameson podcasts to care.
Those are the best.
I love how he challenges the new podcast girl to a debate. Like, she goes, "Debate me, bruh," and he goes in there and just immediately loses and is like, and just walks off.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
Jay Jonas, he's the best part of that game. What do you think of like the performance in terms of like, you know, did you go graphic? Like, did you play it after they did that update where you could get like ray tracing and 60?
Yeah, I had the 60 frame ray tracing. I played it in full performance or full graphic mode. I didn't notice too much of a difference, so just having the 60 frames again make perfect sense to me. So, but I mean, again, we're talking, you know, I'm also playing on a smaller 4K TV because I have like a 27-inch monitor here. So I mean, it's fine. Like, I guess if I played on the big screen, maybe I get a better idea of it. But again, like, it wasn't blow me away graphics, but we have to keep in mind too that the visual style isn't lending itself in the same way that something like, say, Horizon will soon, or God of War. There are some games that just it's going to look even more obvious. Or Ratchet for sure. But also Ratchet was specifically made for one console, so I guess that's another anomaly.
No, but I mentioned the fact like it's a cartoon, like that was the thing.
Yeah,
that benefited as well.
There are certain games that are going to lead itself a bit better. I don't know if this is really the one because I mean, it looks like reality to us, so we're not going to look at it very special. Whereas something fantasy is going to look a lot better in that kind of graphics because it's stuff we don't normally see and colors we don't normally see. Seeing New York looks cool, but it's New York.
Yeah.
So like graphically, it didn't amaze me, but I don't think I was looking for it to either.
Yeah, the best that they can hope for is it's going to look like New York, and we've seen that. So.
I mean, Spider Cat looked like a cat I wanted to pat. That's all I asked for.
Any other kind of thoughts or opinions on Spider-Man?
More just along the lines of like, I think it, like you said, it could have used a little bit more time. Not like in the side quest stuff. I think you could have done a few more missions. Maybe had an aside like quest line where, I mean, I would have liked to see more with the villain that you get at the start of the game. I would have liked to see a little bit more there. I think you could have fleshed that out a bit more, or even just bring somebody else in. Doesn't have to be any of the ones that are already in the Sinister Six. There's plenty of Spider-Man villains that haven't been put in there yet, especially smaller ones that you could do. So there were definitely options they could have had. But I mean, as it still stands, it was a game that I knew going in was going to be pretty short, and I wasn't disappointed by it. I basically finished it in a day, and I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah. If someone isn't listening, would you recommend Spider-Man PS4 or would you recommend Spider-Man Miles Morales?
I mean, you can do both.
True.
I mean, but if you're asking me which is better over the other, it's the original. But I think the original also has. I don't want to sit here and say that like Miles Morales is a bad game compared to Spider-Man. I just know the Parker lore so much more, so I think there's some inherent bias in there. I think if I knew only Miles Morales and didn't know much about Peter Parker, somehow I know crazy world that would be to be in, but I think maybe I would have thought differently about Miles Morales. But because I do have that previous connection, it's a little easier to get like trapped in the Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Aunt May, Doc Ock. Like all that is really easy to sink your teeth into, rather than something where I didn't have really any knowledge of Miles or his mom or his dad. Well, I guess deceased father. I don't care about spoiling a storyline from a game that's much older with the original Spider-Man.
Yeah,
or his uncle or his best friend in this game. Or actually, his other best friend in this game. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that like I don't know anything about, so I went in blind, and that's probably why I don't look at it nearly as like fondly. But it's still good.
Yeah, honestly. The side characters are the best part of that story. Like his best friend, I forget what his name is. Anyways, his best friend's name, or his best friend, like the guy who stays with him over Christmas, and like even his mom, and like I thought the side characters were like the best part of that. And I really like that.
Yeah, they did a great job with the side characters for sure. So I guess to finish off, to give that a score, it's a pretty solid 8. Like it's a great game, and again, it doesn't outstay its welcome. That's what probably makes it a lot better too. It's because as soon as you're in, and by the time that you're ready for more, it's just finishing. So you're wanting for more, and whenever the next Spider-Man comes out, that'll be it.
Yeah, I'd probably rate it a little bit higher, just because I think Sony also did a good job in knowing what to charge for this. Like I think charging, I think it's $50.
I mean, I console share it, so I didn't pay shit.
All right, well, it's at a reduced price, and so I think that's really was a smart idea on Sony. Like they knew what they had there, and I think they priced it perfectly. So
I'm more just go like 8 is as high as I can put a game that didn't like blow me away. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to like put that in comparison, because like that was the first game that I played on the PS5, and it was just, oh my god, this is the next console. Like one thing, I don't know if it was free, like if this was for you, but like because the DualSense was so new and we had the haptic triggers, my fingers were sore for the first couple days swinging, because like you have resistance when you're trying to shoot them. And
yeah, no, I got used to that because of Astro's Player. My hands legitimately went numb after the first 5 minutes of playing Astros, because I wasn't used to that rumble.
Exactly, yeah. So no, I'm glad you like it. Any sort of closing thoughts on that game?
Can't wait for the next thing. It's probably a few years from now, but I can't wait for the next one, because I need them to bring the symbiote to this game. I need it so bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Having him, I'm more excited for Green Goblin. I think Green Goblin's gonna be awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us know if you played Miles Morales. What are your thoughts on it? What did you like? What didn't you like? What are you hoping to see in the next Spider-Man game? Adam, anything else on your mind? Anything else you want to go over?
Like I said, he's a menace.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's leave it there. I feel like we've covered, a good chunk. We've gone through a lot of the stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sticking around with us. If you are one of our longtime listeners, thank you so much for listening. We certainly appreciate you, and we hope that you continue to enjoy the show. If you want to leave us a review wherever you're listening to the podcast, that is always appreciated. If you're listening to us on YouTube, give a like, give a subscribe, and hey, leave some comments in the chat. We'd love to know what you guys are thinking. Keep it in that realm. Let us know what you guys are thinking in general. If there's anything you guys want to cover, or if you want to tell us what your thoughts are on anything that we've covered, you could reach out to us at PixelPlaycast, either on Twitter or Instagram, or you could email us directly at pixelplaypodcast@gmail.com, and we will read your emails on the air. We can kind of talk about those things as well. Yeah, other than that, that's everything. And Adam, final thoughts?
Menace.
What?
Menace.
All right, we'll call it. That's a wrap. Bye, guys.